In this videocast, David Gibson, Director of Technical Services at Varonis, will talk about the issues of data governance with regard to unstructured data. David, let's start at what data governance is.
Data governance is the management of data throughout its life cycle in an organization. So maintaining who has access to it, monitoring its use in an ongoing way.
And there's a few laws that have come into place which talks about data compliance as well. Do you know much about some of these laws?
Certainly. Some of them come up quite frequently for us. PCI, Sarbanes-Oxley, some of the healthcare regulations in the United States in particular, especially.
And when we talk about data governance, what type of data are we talking about?
From a Varonis perspective, we typically are discussing unstructured and semi-structured data, which is all of the Office files, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, images, PDF files, all of the data that end users create and store on file servers, NAS devices, as well as SharePoint.
So any data that's not in a database?
Essentially, any data that isn't in an opposed structured system, right, like a database.
And what does semi-structured data mean?
Semi-structured would include SharePoint data because that data technically can sit in a database. However, it's still stored without any imposed hierarchy. In other words, users can decide where to store their data, like which site and which sub-site, etc. Email might be another semi-structured.
All right, yeah, because lots of users create their own folders in their email and they categorize their data. All right, okay, well that's interesting. So what is the problem? I don't understand the problem here.
Certainly. Well, first of all, there's a lot of unstructured data. Both Gartner and IDC have released studies saying that 80% of all organization data is unstructured. Second of all, it's growing. The same studies have mentioned that in 5 years they estimate 650% growth, which translates into roughly 50% year over year. It's also important, right? This contains, all sorts of information. It's really the information base of your organization.
You mean like intellectual property, confidential information? And
certainly. And then lastly, the processes to manage this data have been manual, inefficient, and ineffective.
Would you say that about SharePoint? I thought SharePoint was supposed to be a document management type system.
SharePoint has some additional layers of opportunity for end users to manage their permissions. However, what we have found is that the complexity of the SharePoint permission sets make it difficult to achieve some of the management intent.
You mean like confidentiality and integrity?
Some of the same risks are associated, many of the same risks are associated with SharePoint that are associated with file systems.
Okay. All right, so back to data governance then. Mm-hmm. So how does that work?
Certainly. Well, one way that organizations have tried to make this work is to scan their repositories for things that they know are important, such as credit card numbers, personal information, maybe keywords like confidential or top secret or project names. And that's no easy feat because a single terabyte of data, as a rule of thumb, could contain 50,000 folders, any of which might contain instances of sensitive data. So just to find it is sort of the beginning. Once we find it, now we have to identify who does this belong to, who has access to it, who's been making use of that access, and how do we remediate those folders that contain sensitive data that are exposed to a large number of